I have kitchen shears, which I keep in my kit for rosary making. If I clip myself a piece of tubing and then trim the top off of it, off of one end of it, it turns into a very handy tool that makes it very easy to make a lot of rosaries. So we're going to clip that. So here's your tool. Now we need to determine how much twine to use for 5 decades. For me, I'm 5'5", so I have found that exactly 3 full lengths of twine, if I spread out my whole entire wingspan 3 times, that's about as much twine as I need. So that's what I'm going to grab. 1, 2, 3. Make sure I got the right amount here. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And one thing that I've found makes making rosaries easy is to, instead of clipping the twine, to melt it, because it makes the end of the twine stiff, and that makes it easier to feed through your tool. So I kind of give it a little rotisserie here, and then I pinch it, and that makes a nice stiff point. And I like the point to be stiff, probably back to about here. So then I'll just touch this up right here. It gets pretty hot, but I'm used to it, so that doesn't bother me. But you really want your twine to be stiff like that. The other end as well, we should check to make sure from the last time. So it's kind of gnarly over here. So we're going to trim that and do the same thing. Most of the action is going to happen on one end of the rosary, but the end of the rosary, when the loop comes together, we have to stuff both ends of the string into the tool at the same time. So having 2 thin and stiff ends really makes that easier. And then once you have your 2 ends ready, pick whichever end you would prefer to work with for the duration, for the majority of the rosary making, and that's the end that you'll start with. All right. So let's get this going. Okay. So I like this end better. I like this end better, so I'm going to start my first knot. Probably, what is this, like 5 or 6 inches from the other end is where our first Hail Mary bead. And the way we build the rosary is we start with the first decade of Hail Marys. So we do 10 Hail Marys and then an Our Father, and then 10 Hail Marys and Our Father, until you've done 50 Hail Marys and 4 Our Fathers, and then we tie the 2 ends together so that the rosary will come together here. So here's how you make your rosary bead, your Hail Mary bead. Give yourself plenty of slack. Okay. Especially when you're learning how to make a rosary, it's always better to have a little bit of extra material, because if you run short, then the whole entire rosary that you almost finished, you won't be able to finish, and that's kind of frustrating because you spent a lot of time, put a lot of love into it, and also it's better to waste like this much material than it is to waste 49 Hail Marys worth of material. So until you really kind of learn how your own rosaries come out, I would plan on having some extra lengths of rosary. It's always a better idea. Okay, so making your knot. Take your trusty tool in your left hand, if you're righty, which I am, And what you're going to do is you're going to hold the rosary string against the open end of your tool and put it across. And you're going to do 3 loops back against the way you started. So 1, 2, 3 loops to make your knot. And then you're going to take your other end that you chose with the little stiff end, and you're going to stuff it into the tool and pull it all the way through. And so here's your knot with the tool in it, and you want to pinch your string and just pull your knot out, and work it with your fingers, and you get one beautiful Hail Mary knot. Okay, so spacing. It's not, the more knots you do, the better you'll get at spacing, and the better you'll get at making pretty knots. So for one, don't get discouraged. Make lots and lots and lots of knots. When I teach my kids how to make rosaries, I'll just cut them a length of string and just have them fill it up with knots. And we don't even, our first rosary isn't even really a rosary. It's just we practice making knots. So when you're on your second knot, what you want to do is hold your first one with your thumb, and then do the same thing again. You're going to go across and then back 3 loops. 1, 2, 3 loops. Pinch your knot. I always slide it forward so it's easier to get the end in behind. Feed it through. Okay. Now every time you wrap your twine around your tool to make a loop, you're putting a curl into your twine. And at first it's really not going to be a big deal to have those curls as you feed your twine through, but they add up pretty quickly. So if you start to notice that your twine is getting bunched up near your Hail Mary beads as you feed them through, you're going to put a little bit of a backspin on the rosary before you carry out your next knot. I'll show you what I mean. So So I always just spin it a couple times to get rid of all the twists in the string. That'll help it. That'll help it not bunch up as I finish up my knot. 1, 2, 3. Like that. Okay. So we're going to do 10 of these. We got 4 so far. So we're going to do another 6. And then we'll get to our Father bead. 10 beads here. 3, 6, 10 beads. So it's time to do our first Our Father. And our first Our Father is going to be, well, actually all of our Fathers are going to be 5 loops. So your Hail Marys are 3 loops. You'll make your Our Fathers 5, so they feel different. And also you should put a space between the 10th Hail Mary and the Our Father bead so that as you pray, you feel the gap with your finger and then a bigger bead so that you don't really have to break your focus on what you're praying. So we'll do 5 loops with a gap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to do the same thing on your other end. And slide it in the back of your knot. And pull it tight. And then we'll just do 10 more Hail Marys. So then this is also just going to take practice. Starting your next Hail Mary, ideally you'd like it to be equidistant from Our Father as the 10th Hail Mary from the previous decade. So what I've found is that you can, 2, 3, really kind of push these knots around pretty. You can be pretty rough with them, especially as you get better and your knots get tighter. You can slide them around as you wind them in. So what I'm going to do is I kind of get it close to where I want it to be, but without pulling it tight. And then I'll just hold it up. And I know if I pull this tight, the whole knot is going to slide a little bit. And that should be about where I want it to be. And if I do it too far or not far enough, you can grab one end and just kind of jam it around. And then you'll see that your bead is really where you want it to be. And then you carry on with your other 9, and we'll do another Our Father. Way through my rosary, actually, I'm a little bit more than halfway through my 3rd decade, which means I'm gonna start coming down the other side of the rosary. And now symmetry is really important to having a good looking rosary. So what I start doing is, instead of counting the Hail Marys to see how many more I have to do, I start every now and then folding the rosary in half and lining up the beads to make sure that everything lines up right. And then I'll know when I get to the bead that lines up with this, the 5th one, then I have 10 beads, and then I can start spacing everything perfectly so that when the rosary is completed and we hold it up, the Our Father beads all line up and everything looks perfect. So feed this in here. Okay. So I know the beads all line up. I have one more to go until it's fine. There you go. That's for me. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then same as here, we have Our Father beads. We tighten them so we can smush them forward or backward, and make sure that they're, as we tighten them down, they remain lined up. Because once the knot is all the way tight, you can still shove them a little bit this way or that, but for the most part, once they're tight, that's where they're going to be, unless you want to pick at them and loosen them back up, which is kind of tough. All right, 3 full decades down, 2 to go. It's time to do your Hail Holy Queen knot. And this is going to be very similar to the other knots, except for this time you have to include both strings, because you're going to tie your entire rosary together. So what you want to do is hold both strings together right in tandem. And same deal, hold your tube, your tool in your left hand. And what I do is I actually wind the string around the full tube part, because I have to be able to fit both ends of the twine in through the loops. And so if I wrap it around the full round part of the tool and then slide it down, I have a bigger diameter, so it's easier to slide the ends of the twine in. So here, let's go ahead and do this. So what I do is I'll hook it on the notch right here, because that's a good hold, and then work my way backwards. So 1, and then because you're wrapping 2 strings, I only go around 1.5 times, which is not going to be. It's going to be thicker by double, because it's 2 strings. So it's going to be, I don't know, depending on, I guess, which angle you're looking at, 3 or 4 strings thick. And then, okay, you have two strings that you have to feed through your knot. So what you want to do is you want to feed the string that's closer to the knot in first, and then chase it with the further string. Otherwise, the strings will cross, and it just makes an uglier knot. So what I'll do is I'll find the closer string, and I'll feed it through just like normal, and I'll go almost the whole entire way, but I won't go all the way. And make sure when you're feeding your string that you don't put it through your loop. If you do that, you just want to pull it out so that it's, you'll figure it out because you'll have a knot on your hands. And I have a little loop here, and before I pull this string all the way through, I'll feed the second one in, and then often the second one will catch, and then I can just pull the one, and it'll slide the second one in for me and does a little bit of the work for me, which I like. And then make sure your Hail Mary beads stay lined up, and pull it twice. Pull it nice. All right. Now this little guy here. So what I'd like to do, this little lead can get in the way. So this one I'll trim right now. And to prevent your twine from unraveling, and just because it's neater, you want to always melt the little fuzzy hairdo here, melt it down into a little nub, and then that'll prevent your twine from unraveling. All right, so now you have your 5 decades of the rosary complete. What's left is, now you have a decision to make. I usually use the Hail Holy Queen bead as also the first Glory Be. So when you pray a rosary, you start at the cross with the Apostles' Creed, and then you pray in Our Father, and then you'll pray 3 Hail Marys, and then you'll pray a Glory Be. I like to use this center knot as the Glory Be. So this is a personal preference. If you want to use the center knot as a Glory Be, the next 3 beads you make, because you're building it backwards at this point, are going to be your 3 Hail Marys. But if you don't want your Hail Holy Queen knot to be your Glory Be, you're going to need to do an Our Father or a 5-loop knot next. But like I said, I like to use this one for that, so I'm just going to go straight into 3 Hail Marys. All right. And remembering that you rather have a little bit extra than not quite enough. Make sure we give ourselves plenty. You're going to end up using both ends of this string as well, so we're going to have to clean these ends up. Then what I found is actually, this works so well. If you unwind your twine a little bit and create a gap in your twine, you can feed your crossbeam piece right through the center of one of those gaps, and you'll be able to get your crossbeam right up in tight. So this way, everything is straight on square, which is beautiful. And so what I do is 4 on the top, 4 on the left and the right, and then 8 on the bottom. And I found that looks the most classically cross. Bring that cross beams right up, and then we'll do 8 to the bottom, and then we'll snug the whole thing. Okay, 8 loops is a lot of loops to feed this end through. So same as when I did my Hail Holy Queen knot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hook it on the notch, and then work it backwards on the round part of the tool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then slide the whole entire knot forward, because now there's a lot more slack in the string. And there's also a knot in the string. That's a shame. Alright, and then just kind of twist this knot up, work it. Okay, and then tighten up the two little arms of the cross. One. Alright, and then all you want to do is trim off the excess, and you're good to go. Cool. That was fun. All right. Ta-da.